WUTC denied it, but it'll be interesting to see what they do behind closed doors and how that decision comes up. Our other hope is Idaho. If one of the states involved turns it down flat, then it's off. And Idaho has really gone around this aggressively. I would like you to, I don't have the website up there, but really Google around. There's a GoFundMe account where they're trying to recoup some of the attorney fees, which are up over $20,000 now for both the states. And I know Rob put out a lot of personal money and things that way, and we need to get behind and see that these guys at least recoup some of the expenses and legal fees that they've incurred because of this. And it's still an ongoing battle. I don't think that Idaho is going to do anything until about March, so it's still going. So then we have Spokane, the city of Spokane, or Seattle East, I guess we want to call it. And it's really a shame, you know, if you want to know where Spokane's going with the city council that we have there right now, all you've got to do is look at Seattle. And so Camp Hope was removed from the City Hall area on Sunday. They gave them a 48-hour notice to move their belongings on Thursday. And there in the middle, you can see Councilwoman Burke, along with several demonstrators chained around the remaining tents on Saturday. Now, I was told she was very, very quick to unchain herself and get the heck out of there after the picture was taken. This was definitely a photo op. And listening to some of the tent dwellers, they were quite upset that on Sunday, when the city came in to clear up after they were all supposed to be gone, and they just picked up all the belongings and all the tents and got rid of them, they just couldn't understand how the city could have just taken those belongings from those people who depended on them. Well, they had plenty of warnings, so heck with it. That's where it's at. What's that on the sidewalk? That's right. I mean, you know, I have nothing against helping folks, but when folks don't appreciate it and trash the area that's trying to help them, there's something wrong with the whole situation. And I've always been taught that if somebody gives you something, if you're using equipment or whatever, you always return it in better shape than what you received it. And if you're using property, you always leave it in better shape than when you went there. And I just don't understand the idea of not respecting other people's property. It just doesn't make any sense. We have upcoming events, and we have very few. But Rob is continuing with the Friday Morning Breakfast Club. It meets 7 in the morning every Friday at something else deli. And it's really a good meeting. I think some of you attend. I don't, since I retired. I don't like 7 o'clock in the morning meetings. But it's a good meeting, and he gets good guests. And our next upcoming event, of course, is Christmas. And we really need to remember why we celebrate Christmas. So I wish you all the blessings of the Christmas season and great, great hope for the new year. In December, we always sort of go through the Bill of Rights. And I'm going to ask all of your help tonight because John will tell you I haven't been at home that long in order to spend a lot of time preparing for this meeting. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, were ratified on December 15th, 1791. And you probably all know why they were added. There was a discussion of should they be added, shouldn't they, etc. But some of our founders felt that we just needed to clarify a little more what our Constitution was actually saying. So we get to our First Amendment. Who would like to read that for me?
We gotta get closer to read it.
No, they don't. They have good eyes.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
So that's how it reads. However, we're looking at freedom of speech. And why do you think that I have that comment up there only for the politically correct? Because otherwise your freedoms seem to be pretty tested. So today, these terms are being slung around with little or no truth. You could just use our July meeting as an example. We invited James Alsop to speak, and therefore Northwest Grassroots was portrayed as a dangerous, far-right, racist group. And elected officials who attended were vilified. So you take a look at the grief that Mayor Higgins took from this. I mean, how many meetings did they have at Spokane Valley City Hall where protesters were in there claiming that he needed to resign? It was ridiculous. And Rob Chase, hey, I invited someone from Spokane Valley City Council to every meeting to give us an update on the Spokane Valley City Council, what was going on. So all of a sudden they're bad people. Rob Chase was pretty good about letting us know what was going on in the county. And it was horrible. I felt so badly that those folks got slammed the way that they did. And the press, who was fed by the sheriff, followed by many of the other elected Republicans. They just had a heyday working to destroy good people, and they had absolutely no concern for the truth. It was pretty sad. So when you read the last bullet there, what do you think? So resolved, oh, darn it. Somebody put something in there that I didn't want. That we urge swift and certain justice to be meted out to domestic terrorists and the groups aiding and abetting through the propagation of hateful ideology, whether in Charlottesville or elsewhere. So if you ignored the parenthesis, what would you think of that statement? Is it a violation of any of our rights?
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Well, that is a resolution that was adopted by the Republican National Committee and the WSRP, along with many other states' Republican organizations. And that's how it was put to me, as far as having Alsop here, is you hosted Alsop, therefore, you aided and abetted, and you're a bad person. So pretty sad, pretty sad. So we have the Proud Boys. How many of you have heard of the Proud Boys? So what's your opinion of the Proud Boys? Who are they? So when you look at the slide there, what I have is what they describe themselves as: Western chauvinists who adamantly deny any connection to the racist alt-right, insisted is simply a fraternal group spreading an anti-political correctness and anti-white guilt agenda. Do any of you feel that there is an anti-political correctness agenda needed?
Yes.
And how about an anti-white guilt agenda? Because we sure went into white guilt in, I want to say it was October, big time. So, or do you think the Proud Boys is a far-right organization that admits only men as members and promotes political violence? That's what Wikipedia says. And SPLC says it's a designated hate group, anti-Muslim, white nationalists, and calls them the alt-right fight club. So when you hear Proud Boys, what comes to your mind? Are they troublemakers? Are they alt-right fighters? What are they? Or are they guys standing up for the idea that this political correctness crap has got to stop, and that the white people have got to stop apologizing for being white, for Lord's sakes? So what do you think? Anybody else? Come on, this is supposed to be participation, guys. So, which is it? We have somebody here that is a proud boy. Do you want to say anything?
Well, we're a men's fraternity that promotes Western culture and Western civilization.
Yeah, we normally...
We're a men's fraternity that promotes Western culture, Western civilization. Yeah. Yes, we are a men's drinking club as well, but we're not, as they say, far right. We accept all sorts of members. Our national chairman was just elected, and he is a Cuban American. So it's not just white people. I mean, it's everybody. It's as long as you believe that the West is the best and that Western culture, and we are tired of apologizing. There's a war on American culture, and there's a war on men especially. And I seem to be one of the youngest in here, not saying you folks are
We're really old.
of a generation. But there was men's groups back in the 60s and 70s, and they have just seemed to disappear. They were labeled racist, they were labeled misogynist, they were labeled all sorts of things, and in the 80s they died out. So this is a revitalization of men's groups, and that's all it is. I mean, we get together and we joke about things, and we talk about men's stuff, and we drink beer. And, you know, that's about it.
So the thing the thing that John was telling me is, well, they wear their MAGA hats and MAGA shirts, and they go to bars, and if people pick on them, they'll pick back. And I'm going, well, maybe we should be more like, maybe we should really be more like Martin Luther King and be passive resistance. I think there's a place for passive resistance. For example, if I go into a bar wearing my MAGA hat and my MAGA shirt, I don't think I want to fight with anybody because I'd lose. So I think passive resistance is very good, but I want John there with a video camera, videoing somebody spitting in my face or whatever they're doing, so we can start portraying what the opposition is. We have got to figure out a way to overcome the labels that are being put on people that are unjust. And so I would really ask for the Proud Boy guys to video and that kind of thing so we can see honestly what happens. And I would really encourage all of us who are older and probably don't have the ability to defend ourselves quite as well as somebody in his shape to wear those MAGA shirts and MAGA hats, and let's see what happens. But bring a video camera along with you. Rusty, you have something to say. Here comes the microphone.
I was very impressed the night that they stood about at the Bellevue and talked about their organization and what they do. And I think what we need is to know where a time and location is that they meet so that we can also support them. The other thing,
But at least we can follow them to the bars.
the other thing,
Because they won't let me in.
that's all right. The other
No, it
thing
isn't.
is us youngsters are tired of this political correct. And that's why they consider us white supremacists, and that's why they consider us radicals, is we're tired of PC because it follows BS. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Rusty. So anyway, if you have questions about the Proud Boys, chatter tonight, but there's some good YouTube videos up there. I was listening to one tonight and I was sort of just laughing as I was putting all this stuff together. It's pretty darn interesting. Gary, you had a comment? Just a moment.
The alt-right, which we hear more and more, where are we from? I mean, all you have to do is be labeled alt-right. I've been the same person I haven't been for politically since I was in high school, but all of a sudden, I'm labeled alt-right just even on my class of 65 high school class Facebook page. Where did that come from? Who designated them an alt-right fight club?
How did I get designated a white nationalist? I was even called an anti-Semite, and I know nothing about anti-Semite, anything that was brought up in our July meeting. You know, they throw the labels out, and they keep throwing them and throwing them and throwing them until they stick. And we've got to stop it. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on. Whoops, we had somebody, I'm sorry.
I just wondered, does he have any applications with him?
Okay, good deal. Okay, so the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And, we've really got to look at that and recognize that the Patriot Act was passed in 2001. And it's been amended, it's been reauthorized, it has had sunset provisions that have been now changed and fixed in place, the whole bit. And what it does is it expands the definition of terrorism, which equates to labeling groups. So this all goes back to the Patriot Act. Groups like ours can be labeled as domestic terrorists. It expanded the government's powers to surveil, to investigate, and detain suspected terrorists like Cotter Page and George Papadopoulos. It violates privacy protections of the Fourth Amendment, and it undermines the First Amendment freedoms of speech and association, as it permits searches to be conducted partly on the basis of the target's exercise of these rights, and because it imposes gag orders without any judicial review. So when Ozzy Knezovich stands in front of a camera and says that this group is this, 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 and this, and I reported them to the FBI, you definitely, if the FBI took them seriously, would expect that you would be searched to find out if you were truly one of these terrible terrorist people. I mean, that's really what the Patriot Act has allowed to happen. Pretty crazy. So when you look at what the Patriot Act says, what does it mean? It involves acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the U.S. or of any state, or appear to be intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, which is where groups like this would end up as, and then to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion, and then to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping, and occur primarily within the territorial jurisdiction of the U.S. So you can see there's very little there that really identifies groups, but there's that one little part there that they can use it to what they want it to be, and not a good thing. So then we go into the rest of the First Amendment, and they talk about freedom of association. So just because of your affiliation with political, activist, or advocacy groups, you can be subject to government investigation. And you can also be labeled. So Northwest Grassroots was labeled as this white nationalist alt-right group. So if you affiliate with them, then they're saying that you must be that also. Totally wrong. And nobody bothered going to all of the YouTube videos that we have up of every meeting to even see what we were about. They just slung out the terms. Pretty crazy. So then we go, we look at government agencies can monitor and even infiltrate religious and political institutions with absolutely no suspicion of criminal activity to assist in terror investigations. So one of you out there could be an FBI agent checking us out here, you know. And then we get, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. So then we get into freedom of information. And the U.S. Department of Justice actively encourages the federal, the state, and local officials to resist and limit access to government records when you're asking for them through the FOIA requests. I mean, our FOIA request process is ridiculous, and sometimes it takes years for people to get the records that they're legitimately asking for, just because, you know, we just don't want you to see that. Freedom of religion. Removal of religion from public access. Singing Christmas carols in schools. Saying Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. How many stores do you go into and they say Happy Holidays to you? And I always respond, Merry Christmas. Encourage you to do the same thing. Look at, you know, can a business refuse to serve homosexuals? Can churches refuse to conduct gay marriages? Pretty darn hard. Are religious extremists the same as Al-Qaeda and Hamas? No, but they're treated that way. So then we get to freedom of the press. And at the time in late 1780s and 1791, when this was ratified, our founders felt that freedom of the press was really the most important freedom that they were issuing here, because the press had the ability to reach far more people than a person talking to a group of people in a public square. Makes sense back in 1791, don't you think? But today, so much has changed. We've got radio, television, the internet, YouTube, Facebook, and Lord knows whatever else is right around the corner. And individuals can have as much or more influence as the press. It's pretty interesting how things have evolved and changed. So freedom of the press, freedom of speech really are as important as one another. Freedom of speech for individuals as well as the press. That is the only way that we can get our messages out. And we all know that the press does not like our message, so how else can we get our message out other than through some of the other electronic means that are available to us? Quite interesting. So then we go to the Second Amendment. Bruce.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
So the Second Amendment actually recognizes a very natural right. We have a natural right to defend ourselves. So if you go back to the caveman days, we could use stones and rocks and clubs to scare off animals, that kind of thing, and other intruding people and stuff. So it's natural. I mean, it's very natural that you want to defend yourself. And so we've escalated and we have guns now. It was really designed to protect Americans from the infringement by the government. It is really what our founders were thinking of, because honestly they were living back in that day, and that's what we were coming out of, was the absolute control of government. But all gun control laws infringe on our gun rights. I don't care how sensible you think they are or whatever, they do infringe upon our gun rights. And I-1639 passed, unfortunately, by a 60% vote, and it was sold as safe schools and safe communities. Like I said, I think it was very, very misrepresented to the people, and there wasn't enough done to get the word out as far as what 1639 was about. It was interesting when we had meetings, you know, and people asked what 1639 about, everybody knew. But how do you get into the other communities? And that's something that we all need to figure out. It's sort of sad. And I liked that other quote there of Thomas Jefferson. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is, as a last resort, to protect themselves against tyranny in government. So that's where they were at that time. But we need to be able to keep and bear arms in order to protect against tyranny in government. And I don't mean that you need MRAPs, but at least you shouldn't be limited from having some of the guns that they're trying to ban and outlaw. It just doesn't make any sense. So we go to the Third Amendment. Next. Bruce is eating, but he can handle it.
No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
Now this is sort of known as the Forgotten Amendment, because you sort of think that it really doesn't apply today. But I want you to know back in 2011, 2013, and around there was a Henderson, Nevada couple, and the police decided that they needed to use their home to surveil drug activities that were going on in the neighborhood, and they moved in. And they just took over the house. And the family didn't want them to, so they were arrested for not allowing the police to use their home as lookouts in that investigation of their neighbor. Unfortunately, in 2015, a federal district court dismissed the Third Amendment violation claim, saying that the police could not be considered military. So when you look at this, can our police be considered soldiers? Well, if you look back in 1791, there were no professional police. There were soldiers that were sort of law enforcement, but they didn't have police. And then when you look at the militarization of our police forces, is there really a big difference between our police forces and our military? I'm not sure about that one. So, do they have the right to commandeer your home? You know, and for how long? I mean, these folks in Nevada wanted to stay there for a while. I guess if they wanted to look at my neighbor's house for a couple hours, but not to move in and expect me to feed them. So there's a lot of things that are going. So the Third Amendment shouldn't be the Forgotten Amendment, and we probably will be seeing more of people saying, hey, you don't have that right. Fourth Amendment. It's a long one. Somebody else. Sharon.
I'll do it.
Yeah, she's got it.
Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
So our Fourth Amendment, we're having a lot of problems with that one. So law enforcement, under our current laws, may conduct secret searches and wiretaps in your home or office without showing probable cause. Law enforcement may demand personal records held by any source, including your doctor, your employer, your accountant, or your library, and claim it's related to an investigation to terrorism, and those record keepers may not reveal your records were provided to the government. So in other words, your doctor could be asked by the government to give them your records, and your doctor is not allowed to tell you that that request came about. So then when you look at third-party doctrine, What third-party doctrine really says is that we hold no reasonable expectation of privacy in information when we voluntarily surrender that information to third parties, such as internet providers, banks, emails, websites that we visited, Facebook, that type of thing. No expectation of privacy there. The TSA, I sort of wish Vitaly was here tonight. But the TSA can legally and reasonably search you because you're consenting to the search by coming to the airport and wishing to board an airplane. That's been the ruling on that one. They have adjusted their searches, so they have to all do the same kind of personal body search now. And I didn't realize this, but at the Spokane Airport, you need to request to go through the scanner, or if you set off the alarm, you're personally searched. And I've had both my hips replaced, so I set off the alarms automatically. And so I got to go through one of their new body searches. And I got to tell you guys, they're stupid. I mean, you're just going, really? And I mean, they touch everywhere. And they tell you what they're touching. And everybody's watching. I mean, you're just going, come on, just get over with it. But no, So we don't like the scanners because of, you know, the possible health risks. I figure I'm old enough that the possible health risks will occur after I'm dead. And, but those personal body searches, you're just going, oh. I mean, this is just not nice. And believe it or not, they do it to kids. I mean, you're just going, no, this is not good. Civil asset forfeiture. What that is it allows the police to seize and then keep or sell property they allege has been involved in a crime. Now, you don't need to ever have been arrested or convicted of a crime for the cash and the cars or even the real estate that they take away. So they can say that they felt that XYZ was and take it, sell it. You have no right to get it back, and they never have to convict you of a thing. I mean, again, that's wrong. Stingrays. Who knows what stingrays are? Tell me what stingrays are, Julian.
It's basically like it's basically like a fake cell phone tower that captures your phone, connects to it thinking that it's a real cell phone tower, and it captures information from your phone. I don't know if it can actually capture your conversations, because I don't know if it's actually completing calls for you, but it's a grabs
location
stuff off your phone. Yeah.
So, but it only would capture the location of the person they're surveilling, right? Anybody that's using a cell phone in the area where they have a stingray operated is being captured also. So you have a whole lot of unsuspecting people that are being gathered up, okay? And then we all know what drones are, and we all know what license plate surveillance is all about. So again, a lot of impetus there for really, are we really safe and reasonable from searches and all that good kind of stuff that the government can do. And a lot of this goes back to the Patriot Act. And I don't care what any of you guys say, our founders were divinely guided, because look at what we're experiencing now, and so many of their words are so true. And so we have Benjamin there saying, they who would give up an essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty or security. And that's where we are. Pretty sad. Okay, we're going to go on to the Fifth Amendment. Where's my mic guy? Hand it to Sharon behind you.
No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentiment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising from the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger.
So technically what this amendment does is it gives us protections. It gives us the right against self-incrimination. It gives us the right to due process. It protects us against double jeopardy. We can't be punished twice for the same crime. That only applies in criminal cases, and there are exceptions. You could be tried by the state and then for the same crime by the federal government or vice versa. You could appeal, and then that would change it, that kind of thing. The American government has really shredded the Fifth Amendment by subjecting us to indefinite detention and taking away our process rights. Both President Bush and Obama have authorized the detention or killing of American citizens without due process. Bush detained 4 Americans without trial. Obama killed al-Awlaki and his son, both American citizens living in Yemen, and there's probably been more since then. And so it's, our Fifth Amendment is one of those that we just sort of don't pay a whole lot of attention to because, quote, it doesn't apply to me. It does apply to us because our government just keeps pushing the limits, pushing the limits, pushing the limits. We need to know these amendments, and we need to understand what our Constitution, the amendments are about. Sixth Amendment. Are you ready, Bruce? Yes. Here comes the microphone.
Okay, do I need the mic? I'll take it. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and the district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and the cause of the accusation.
Oops. So when we look at the Sixth Amendment, it gives us enforceable Constitution protections, like a speedy trial, like a public trial, like an impartial jury, knowing what you're charged with, knowing that you can confront the witness against you, and to demand the presence of the witnesses in your favor and the right to an attorney. Unfortunately, our court systems have become so convoluted that a lot of people, I mean, you just don't get this. It just doesn't happen. Sort of sad. Seventh Amendment. Anybody? Sharon's raising her hand.
In suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law.
So the Seventh Amendment guarantees the right to a jury trial only in federal court, not in state court. It only allows monetary damages, not any equitable relief kinds, injunctions, that kind of thing. And our civil cases are declining because of the cost, because the cases take years to get to trial, that kind of thing, and instead have been replaced with mediation, arbitration, and plea bargains. So it's, again, our justice system, our court system really needs to be looked at and figured out what can we do about it. Eighth Amendment?
Jeff.
Whoever. Go ahead, Jeff.
Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted.
Okay, so that protects us from, is supposed to protect us, I should say, from potential tyranny by government, and one of the most important amendments in today's society. So when you look at this, is indefinite detention that's allowed under the Patriot Act and NDAA, is that cruel and unusual punishment? Are whistleblowers being cruelly punished with unusually harsh sentences meant to intimidate anyone else from speaking out? Prohibition on excessive bail is a good thing. It really prevents the government from holding us for long periods of time simply by imposing a really, really high bail that we can't afford to pay, and therefore just be, rotting in jail, that kind of stuff. But if it wasn't for that, the government could hold a person in jail for as long a time as they really want before their trial, regardless of the severity of the charge. So there's things in here that are good for us and have really helped, but we do need to watch things like indefinite detention, whistleblowers being, unduly really criminalized. And today, one of the biggest controversies surrounding the Eighth Amendment is the death penalty itself cruel and unusual punishment. So that's something that's buzzing around all over the place. Ninth Amendment.
The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
So it represents two of the most significant themes of our Constitution. Sovereignty, that the people are the source of the government's power, and the presumption of liberty, that the government should bear the burden of showing why a right should be restricted. So it's really a reminder that the rights guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, along with the limitations placed on the government, were never intended to be an exhaustive list. Rather, the Bill of Rights is a starting point. And the founders really understood that the balance of power should always favor the people, not the government. So the Ninth Amendment, what it really does is preserves all our rights not cited in the Constitution. Things like the presumption of innocence. You don't find that in the Constitution, but that's one of our rights. We're presumed innocent until proven guilty. The right to travel within the country. We don't have to have a passport to go to Idaho, that kind of thing. And the right to privacy, especially in marital type situations. So you hear today a lot of people saying that we have the right to health care. All should have health care. Well, that's not a right awarded under the Ninth Amendment, because that would curtail freedoms of the citizens by burdening those citizens who have to pay for health care who don't want to be paying for health care. So it's not a universal. I heard the other day that water was a right. We all have the right to water. Well, I guess if you're living in the desert, you don't have the right to water. There isn't any. Unless you want to pay for it, and then there's a burden. So you're just going, there's no right to set a wage. Let's say that all singers think they need to have a wage of XYZ dollar. Well, darn it, if you're a singer with absolutely no talent, you don't get that wage, that kind of thing. So there's things like that just are not covered under the Ninth. Julian?
Yeah, what you're talking about is like positive versus negative rights. But positive rights like a right to a particular wage, a right to have some, water or health care or what have you. We don't, the Constitution, the system that we have was not founded on the idea of positive rights. It was founded on the idea of negative rights, where the government may not infringe on your right, your ability to have property, right? To acquire property. It may not infringe on your right to freedom of speech and all those other types of things. And so it's a list of, the government may not do this, may not do that. You almost might look at it like the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not XYZ. And if I can just say, if the First Amendment had ended after the first 5 words, I think we'd all be a lot better off.
Thank you. So it's really up to us, the American people, to reclaim the rights. Number one, understand them, and reclaim those that are being taken away. And unless we stand up for our liberties, everything will just be ignored. We have got to be a voice. Here's Thomas. If the federal government has the exclusive right to judge the extent of its own powers, it will continue to grow regardless of elections, the separation of powers, and other much touted limits on government power. So, it is up to us as the people to really know what our rights are, what's outlined in the Constitution, what's in the Bill of Rights, and stand up for those things. 10th Amendment.
The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
So out of the U.S. Constitution, there are really only 3 federal crimes: piracy, treason, and counterfeiting, and all other criminal matters should be left to the states. And Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution lists the 30 congressional powers. They've sure exceeded 30. And, so when you think about it, what about gun laws, hate crimes, national ID cards, all those kinds of things? We have the right to nullify. We need to really understand what that's all about. So don't interfere with anything in the Constitution. That must be maintained, for it's the only safeguard of our liberties. Abraham Lincoln. So I want to ask y'all, how many of you have a pocket constitution, and how many would like one? Kevin, I'll let you hand these
Cecily,
out.
How about the...
Raise your hands if you want one.
Cecily, how about the Supremacy Clause?
What about it? Tell me, Bruce. Tell me where you're going.
Well, there's a lot of discussion about the Supremacy Clause. And what they're trying to do is say that the federal government is supreme over the states, whereas it's very clear in the 10th Amendment that the states are superior to the federal government. It is the states that created the federal government, not the other way around. So when they're saying we have supremacy, we the federal government have supremacy, you can always refer them back to the original clause and say, no, we are the creator of the federal government and we are the ones that decide what the supremacy is.
Right. And that's why I wanted you all to have this, know this, understand this. You can go on the internet and get many good outlines of what everything is about. You need to know it. You really do. So keep those handy. What we'll do right now is go to open mic. Does anybody have any announcements to make? And from open mic, I believe we go to our movie tonight. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, thanks for the teasing, Julian. But I want to go back to Avista and Hydro One. And we all know that Rob Chase had a tremendous influence in changing the course of that whole dialogue. But it cost him. It really cost him a lot. And it cost him basically, I believe, his election, because he sidetracked his entire election and spent countless hours doing this. So a person like that, there are very few in my mind that have that, the concern for the people, and it contrasts so much with the other county commissioners and several other people. So I'm just saying that I think that Rob Chase just dropped in, or maybe I did. Oh, there he is. But a round of applause, and really you've got to appreciate him for who he is all these years.
a true patriot and a one that's concerned with you, the individual, and you, the citizens. So,
And I just want to add, for every clap, just multiply it by 10.
You bet.
And contribute.
you bet. So,
Appreciate that. No, it really is. It takes people a lot to stand up and fight some of this. And I'd asked Rob to come up here and say a few words with the microphone. With the mic.
Okay.
And because really he is a hero. And we don't get too many heroes. And the one thing that I want to say is Rob is not a politician. And I think that is the biggest compliment that I can provide him, because I've got to tell you, from the experience I went through, I have absolutely no respect for most of our politicians.
Well, thank you, Cecily. I just wanted to bring up the fact that Avista is appealing the decision by the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission. So the battle's not over yet. There's a lot of risk for them. They may as well do this, and they might get a good ruling, you know, from a judge too. So Fred Kelly Grant, my attorney, said this will go all the way to the Supreme Court. He said this before the WTC made their decision too. So I was happy to see that. I hope to think that they did make a good decision based on the facts of the case, that there is no public benefit to this. And actually I posted a thing on Spokane Liberty Caucus by Angelo Lonasario from Sandpoint, and it's really a good essay on what's behind all of this. You know, the takeover, the regionalization, and the global government that they're trying to bring into effect too. So, you know, you wonder, why are they doing this? You know, what does Avista get out of it? Well, we know what Avista gets out of it, at least the board of directors and the shareholders, but, you know, what does Hydro One get out of it? Well, it's part of a larger agenda, you know, going back to Maurice Strong, of course, who he was the author behind Uranium One, but not everybody knows he's author behind Hydro One too. So if they can get our water, our electrical rates, our natural gas, our energy, and all that, there's not a whole lot left, you know, that we can do. So they're going to pack us into cities. The whole Agenda 21 thing is true. We don't like to think so, but a lot of the people that are our leaders are very evil people. They're not out for our best interests too. In fact, it's a spiritual battle, I think, in a lot of ways too. So I'll still stay involved, do what I can do, but I think now the whole battle to stop the Avista Hydro thing is, I think Citizens Alliance for Property Rights is going to take the lead on that too now. So anyway, thank you very much for the applause, and I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, it takes a lot to really get out of your comfort zone and figure out what can we do to stop something like this. A lot of us look at things and we say, this isn't right, it's wrong, what can I do? And so it's the idea that we really need to figure out how to be more active and how to really have our voices heard. And I appreciate what Rob did. And he learned that there are many people, it doesn't matter what hat they were wearing, if they were blue or red, there were many people that didn't like what was going on. And we've got to quit constraining ourselves to one way of thinking and recognize that there are issues that affect every citizen, not just if they're a Republican or a Democrat. So anybody else have anything? Gary.
There's a common thread that goes through. There is a common thread that goes through a lot of this. You know, you look at the Hydro One and look at some other issues. In California, they had an issue with a small fish and a court decision. The net effect of that was to wipe out a significant portion of agriculture in the state that was primarily owned by farmers that were conservative. Then you look at the wool situation with cattlemen. Again, it's defunding smaller, somewhat wealthy people that have earned it over generations in their family and taking that resource away from them. That is a common thread that we see going through all of it. Just wanted to bring that out as a thought.
Thank you. If you want something to say here, we need you up here because we can't hear.
I'll go back and say.
No, it was that, Jen. Anyone else? Okay, John's telling me it's sort of noisy in the back with the bowling. So with the movie, you might want to move forward. And I think you're going to really find what we're wanting to do is really start off with what is the foundation of this country. So I really feel that this movie is important for you all to see and really start at the beginning. So here we go. Way to end the year, to sort of get our footings again and to really recognize what America's about and to be proud of it. We sweep so much under the rug anymore, and we don't want to say things because it might not be politically correct, as we talked about earlier. So just any of you have any comments about the movie or about just how you're feeling? Well, I hope you enjoyed it anyway. And I just get that, you know, America is special and we need to keep it that way. But we can't keep it that way if we continue to hide our history and put down our history and change our history. We need to stand up and teach who we are and what America's about. So I hope you all have a great Christmas, and we will see you in January, either here or at Darcy's. We'll let you know. So thanks so much.